Welcome to Ridge Effects, the place for newbies, indies, as well as low budgeters. And last week, guys, I released an Iron Fist hand effect teaser just after last week's episode, and it actually got quite a bit of attention, quite a bit of views, and I was so excited that you guys are excited with this episode. So here it is. Now this request comes from a guy who goes by the name of Swooper HD. I hope that was right. Anyway, he asked, maybe Iron Fist hand effect? I don't know. Maybe. So let's jump straight into it. All you gotta do is shoot your footage and of course head to the description and download the asset or assets that I'll be using for this effect. But before we kick things off, I want to point out that you guys might notice some similarities between this tutorial and Video Copilot's subsurface skin tutorial. Now that one did come out a few years ago, and its whole aim was to try and recreate that subsurface distortion that was present in Iron Man 3's main villain effects, like that fire kind of stuff, and it was a really cool tutorial, and I'll link it down below because you should check it out. Now the reason there are some similarities and you might notice some steps cross over from that one to this one is because it's technically the same type of effect. Now it's a different program and it is a few different steps involved, and it possesses a different look and overall different effect, but I did want to point out that a lot of the steps may be similar to that one, and no ill intent possible, just it was unavoidable. So definitely check that video out in the description. It's a really cool video if you're trying to create the Iron Man effects. Yeah, with that out of the way, let's jump into Hitfilm Express and I'll show you how it's done. Okay guys, here we are in Hitfilm Express. My footage is sitting neatly and ready in the timeline, so there's no need to waste time. Let's get moving. Step 1 is to track our footage. Now here in this shot, my hand isn't moving too much, so a simple 1-point motion track will work. Although if your hand moves quite a bit, I'd go with a 2-point track or even Mocha if you own Hitfilm Pro. But for me, a 1-point track will do just fine. So let's click Ben, the plus icon over here. Yes, I named him Ben, and create a new point layer. I'll call mine tracking data. Now with your clip selected, head to the controls panel and under tracking, click the plus icon. The tracking window should appear and we can now zoom in and move the boxes over a suitable area. You're going to want to find areas that don't leave the frame and that contrast their surroundings. For me, it's my thumb. So let's adjust these boxes until we are happy, then hit track forward. If your track goes off at any point, just manually readjust it for a few frames. Okay, now that that's done, let's select our point layer in the tracking window as our choice for where to store the data. Now that the tedious stuff is out of the way, let's have some fun. First, I'll create a new plane and call it Fractal. Now search for the Fractal Noise effect and drop it onto the plane. For the look of the noise, I'll bump up the scale a bit as well as add some more exposure and contrast by messing with the color. Like so. We want to get some defined bright and dark spots. Okay, let's turn that layer off and select the free hand mask tool. We can then, with that layer selected, draw a shape around our hand. Don't be too precise as we'll be playing with the expansion and feather later. Now turn the layer back on and head to the mask shape settings. There we'll bump up the feather amount. We'll come back to this later, so don't worry about making it too perfect just yet. Next, let's drag in our veins image and rotate it as well as position it over our hand. Once you've done that, mask out whatever you want to keep and feather once again so that the veins kind of trail off into the hand. Okay, select both the Fractal Noise and the veins layers and make them into a composition. I'll call mine Fist. Next step is customization. You can duplicate the veins, rearrange them around your fractal area, as well as maybe change the color by adding the hue colorize effect and playing with the settings, like I'm doing now. I would suggest adding the lens blur effect to maybe 1 or 2 of the veins and keeping the amount somewhere between 5 and 10 pixels, just so they're not too sharp. Okay, head back into the main comp and let's parent our first comp to the tracking data point and set the blend mode to add. Now I'll head to the effects panel and search for the curves effect, then drop that onto my comp. Here guys, just experiment with the red, green and blue channels until you get a nice goldish yellow. You can also adjust the RGB curve to add more glow and contrast. Okay, before we animate guys, this is the time for final tweaks. Switch over from your main comp into your first comp and play a bit more with the feather and expansion settings as well as the veins until it's just right. This may take some time, but at the end it'll definitely pay off. Okay, you done? Good. Now let's animate. With the first comp selected, I'll draw a mask around the bottom of my wrist just before my sleeve here. Then I'll set the expansion up a bit and feather the mask until it looks smooth. Here seems good. Okay, now bring the expansion all the way down until there's nothing visible anymore. Now turn on keyframing for the expansion, move forward say 2 seconds and boost it up until your entire fist is covered. I'll also make those keyframes smooth. You can play with the timing to suit yourself and your shot as always. Now let's add some environment lighting. Create a new grade layer and trim it to start when your first expansion keyframing does. Now add the color temperature as well as the curves effects onto the grade layer. Okay, in the color temperature controls, let's just move the slider right to get a warm orangey color. You can add as much as you like. In the curves effect, we'll just boost it up so we can add some light into the scene. You can also use the exposure effect if you're using Hitfilm Pro, as it gives a better look. But we'll stick to curves since exposure is not available in Express. Okay, now let's mask the grade layer around our actor and any objects close to their hand. As always, we'll just feather that to perfection. Now it's as simple as keyframing the opacity from 0 to 100 as your fist lights up. Again, let's turn those keyframes from linear to smooth for a better transition. But that's that. As one last step for some more intensity, I duplicated my fist comp and set the blend mode to hard light, as well as changed the opacity to something like 50%, but that's style and totally optional. Anyway guys, add up all those many steps, calm and recharge your chi, and you should end up with something that looks a bit like this. Ladies and gentlemen, we wrap up this episode. The show will be going on break for 1 or 2 weeks, probably 1 because I'll miss you guys too much. But in the meantime, you can definitely check out the full playlist of season 2, which has about 11 episodes. I don't know why I started on that. 11 episodes as well as 23 episodes of season 1. Both of those will be linked on the end card of this video. As always, you can hit me up on my social medias right over there. And to stay up to date with everything going on behind the scenes here, behind the scenes in my life, and just for some random stuff sometimes. Our first episode back after our mini hiatus will be covering that Iron Fist title intro that you saw in the beginning of this episode and the teaser trailer. I did get a request for that as well, so look forward to that, and until next time, I will see you in the next video.